GKFNF, hello, welcome. I'm just cutting out some stickers today. Hi, Crypto Jasmine. Thank you. I'm just cutting out some stickers and magnets. I have to readjust my camera. Check, make sure my phone isn't low battery. Would you guys like it if I played music? So now I'm kind of quiet right now. Yeah, it has little bats in it. And it says Vamp Milk at the top. These are the magnets, but I also have them in stickers that I cut earlier. So yeah, they have like little bats and bubbles in them. Pretty much all the vampire stuff have bats in them. This one's like a can of pop. It has bats in it as well. So this is a juice box and it's a magnet. I just messed this up. This one is a vampire boba tea. There's also like little bats in here as well. $20.25 has been really okay. I just went grocery shopping yesterday because there's supposed to be a giant storm coming to Chicago. And we have this thing called a polar vortex where it gets like below 0 degrees outside plus below 0 degree wind. And we just have like a lot going on. I do most of my grocery shopping at ethnic grocery stores, and this week I went to the Chinese grocery store because it's closer to us, and I just got a bunch of Asian foods and snacks and everything, just preparing for it. So far, I've just been like focusing on, how I can plan my content better in 2025 with the impending TikTok ban, because my biggest social media following is on TikTok, and I'm trying to put more energy into YouTube because if TikTok is going away, I want to still have a platform, and YouTube is more beneficial in the long run. And I'm just trying to figure out how to connect to my audience in a way that is more beneficial to me, and how I can create more sustainably without having to worry about overexhausting myself or anything. So far, so good. I'm just figuring out what I want to do with my life this year and how I want to plan things. But, how are things going for you so far? I'm fine keeping warm. Luckily, the heat in my apartment is pretty good. Um, we don't have any issues with our pipes, so far. There are some warming centers set up for people who do have issues with heat in Chicago, but we, like, as far as, where I live at, we're fine. But, I have seen, the city provide, warming centers for people who are going to be in dire straits. So that's pretty good. I'm happy that, more people are going to have access to heat and warm and stuff. Because I don't really have a job outside the home, aside from occasional brand ambassador stuff, and I haven't really booked any of that in a while. I'm not really gonna be out and about, so I'm not worried about it. And even if I did have like a regular job, I'm not going outside in a polar vortex, because like a couple of years ago when we first started getting in the polar vortex, it was negative 50 degrees outside with like negative 50-degree wind chill with a risk of frostbite. So I'm not risking frostbite to go anywhere. So that's why I stocked up on groceries, I stocked up on snacks, and I want to try and get the house in order as far as cleaning, laundry, and all those chores. But yeah, like we're staying warm just fine. I hope you guys are able to stay warm. Um, I'm not sure if you're gonna experience that where you are. I know, right? Like they say they're gonna get rid of it every year, but like the fact that it passed in the House and the Senate, with Congress and the president coming into office, we have no idea what's happening. As far as I know, the ban is still in effect on the 19th, but nobody knows if it's actually gonna get banned or not. So I'm just trying to do everything I can to prepare for the band, because I really have no idea if it's gonna happen or not. I did create a Lemonade account, but I'm really not active on there. And there's some talk about Lemonade getting banned too, because it has the same problem with being owned by ByteDance and whatnot. So yeah, like I don't know. Like I just don't want to put so much work into TikTok if it's just gonna get banned and people aren't gonna be able to update the app and all that. So I'm just like, well, I just want to focus more on YouTube because I have no idea if they're serious about the ban or not. So yeah, my 2025 is good so far. 2024 was awful. Just on the week into this year is better for me. And Christmas we moved to San Diego, so it's been amazing. Oh wow, you're in San Diego now, so you don't have to worry about snow or anything, but maybe like earthquakes and wildfires. But at least you get to get warm and you're not worried about, the polar vortex and everything. Moving in the winter is hard, but I guess it's a little easier when, it's warm where you are. because I moved in the winter into this apartment about 3, 4 years ago, and it was rough. Like, we didn't have movers, we were moving everything ourselves. My partner rented a U-Haul, and he made like 2 trips, and we took turns, bringing things up into the freight elevator, which luckily our apartment has. And then we borrowed a pulley thing from them. So yeah, moving is tough, especially in the winter. Yeah, it was snowing, it was freezing, it was in the middle of January. We took advantage of the COVID special they had going on because, the rent moratorium was in effect. So a lot of people weren't paying their rent. Apartments were losing money. So they had a good deal on apartments because they're like, well, not enough people are renting. And then the people who were renting weren't paying rent because, they couldn't work with the pandemic and everything being shut down. So, yeah, moving is exciting. I hope you enjoy your new place. But yeah, moving in the winter is not for the weak. I hope you guys got a good deal because it's so unideal to move in the wintertime, especially when you come from like a cold climate or you're going to a cold climate. Oh my gosh. I moved from the south suburbs of Chicago into the city of Chicago a few years ago here, but I am originally from the city. I moved a little bit all over the place as far as Illinois goes. I lived in Wisconsin for a year for boarding school, and I lived in Maryland for 2 years when I was in college. So I've lived around, different places. But yeah, the place I live at is okay. It has its issues. It's not perfect, but we got heat and it is pretty warm. We have heat in all of the rooms. So the room I'm in now has heat. The living room has heat. The bedroom has heat. There's a switch in our bathroom where we can turn the heat on in the bathroom. So yeah, it's pretty good. And the low heat is pretty good for warming up the apartment. I almost never have to use the high. So I'm pretty prepared. No, I don't think you've ever asked me about Nando's. I've never been there. I've never been to Nando's, but you know what? I don't eat meat, and I think that Nando's is like a chicken place, so I don't have a reason to go there. Yeah, rent is cheaper in the wintertime than in the summertime because apartments are more likely to give deals because they know that when moving in the wintertime is very not ideal. A lot of people tend to rent in the summertime and it can be busy. So you get more deals renting in the wintertime than you do in the summertime. But I understand that not everybody's lease agreement ends around the same time that you want to, and in the early can have issues. Yeah, I've heard their sauces are pretty good. I've never tried a lemon pepper sauce. I know I have lemon pepper seasoning at home, but I never tried it like in the form of a sauce. Yeah, this is my lavender latte. It has like little bats and stuff in it. But yeah, like I never had a lemon pepper sauce. I do have lemon pepper seasoning, but yeah. I used to live in DC and I miss Nando's. I keep waiting for them to come to Southwest, East Coast. I used to live in Maryland and go to DC a lot because I was connected to like that whole DMV area. So I understand, wanting like missing food in the area. I don't think I ever like tried out a lot of restaurants when I was in DC because I was pretty homesick for Chicago. I don't even remember the names of the places that I like because they were like little mom and pop shops, like one in Georgetown. I remember I moved there like years ago, back when Obama was president, and there were cupcake shops everywhere. I think there was a TV show about DC cupcakes. So there were like cupcake pop-ups everywhere, and they were so good. But like, oh my gosh, how do we all of a sudden get obsessed with cupcakes? But that's pretty much all I remember about the food in like DC is that cupcakes were everywhere, and there were like tiny little mom and pop shops selling like ethnic food here and there. I did like their Middle Eastern food though, but there was pretty good stuff here too. So I don't know. I like the food in like Maryland, DC area, but the food in Chicago is just so much better. No offense to anybody from there, but you know that's just been my own personal experience. I lived there like 2011, 2012. I moved back to Chicago around like 2012, 2013, one of those years. So almost at the same time. They probably moved at the same time as well. Almost. I think I left around the time that you moved, so we probably like just miss each other. But yeah, like I like the living like it had its pros and cons. Like I don't like their public transportation system. The traffic is absolutely crazy and everything. I do miss like their art scene, their fashion scene. I feel like it's more of a community out there, especially since it's close. Since it was like so close to New York, that's when I first started freelance modeling. And you know, like with the economy crash, I couldn't get like a regular job, so I was pretty much kind of forced into like being a full time model out there, which was fun. But yeah, it has its pros and cons. I went to a golf club in DC. I cannot tell you what it was called though, but I know that somebody snuck me in. I was underage at the time. I was like 19, and someone snuck me in there, and like people were sneaking me drinks and just were telling me, "Hey, don't tell anybody your real age. If anybody asks, you know, for ID, oh, just tell them that you're with me." It was like it wasn't a full time golf club. It was a restaurant that they had golf night at, which is how a lot of golf clubs run. Where it's not like a full on club, but it's just like it was a space that hosted like golf events that I went to once, and that was pretty fun. I liked it. I met a lot of cool, interesting, and fun people there. Different ages, different walks of life. It was nice. I miss going out to the golf club on a regular basis. I used to go all the time in the Chicago area before COVID, before cancer, and all of that. And now I don't really go anymore. You're in your normie era. I was like never really a normie, except for like when I was a literal child. Like I've always been alternative, even like as a teenager. I feel like the DC, Maryland area kind of like it. I feel like that area isn't as accepting of alternative people as the Chicago area is, so I can understand why you would feel that way. Especially given, you know, if you were younger, like a teenager or something, it was very hard. A lot of alternative people that I met when I was in Maryland, DC area, they were like they kind of had double lives. It's like if they weren't like a bartender or working retail or a club promoter or DJ, you know, stereotypical golf jobs, you know, if they weren't, you know, a tattoo artist, a piercer, a photographer, or, you know, something artistic, they were either in the military, came from the military, worked for the government, came from a family that worked for the government, or were like super religious, and there was like no in between. And then like the alternative people that I did meet, they had like completely double lives. Like they had different names, different circles, different parts of the city that they were operating in, even though it was relatively small. They had different social media, like they had different Facebook names, different Facebook profiles. Like they'll have their work people on one profile and like their real friends and stuff on their other profile. They would never like invite their family and their friends in the same space. And they would never like, I don't know, like they worked really hard to like never mix their personal life and professional life to avoid being ostracized for being alternative. Like that was really common when I lived out in Maryland versus living in Chicago. Yeah, everyone was so obsessed with their careers. Everyone was so into people pleasing. Like people pleasing was a very heavy. Even having fun, people were talking about work. Exactly. Like even if I were to like go hang out with somebody, it was very common for people to dress in business casual just in case they ran into someone from work while they were out and about. Like it was kind of crazy how people acted. Like they had completely separate lives. A lot of people that were alternative, they kind of carry like a shame for being alternative. Like they would be comfortable around other alternative people and would be just fine, but outside of that, they were very uncomfortable and they were very like kind of looking over their shoulder and super paranoid about running into someone from their life who isn't alternative and who isn't accepting. I knew somebody that got married and they had two different weddings. They had a wedding for their friend, they had a wedding for like their non alternative friends and family, co workers, military, government people. And then they had another wedding for like their alternative people. And, completely separate Facebook profiles, completely separate invites. Like, it was crazy. Like, how do you even have the money for all of that? I was that person except I didn't live a double life. I was just living normally. Cage. Yeah, two weddings. People had two. It was very normal for like the alternative people that I knew who were like making good money. Like they worked for the government or the military or something. Like it was very common for them to have two birthday parties, two weddings, two anniversaries. If they had a kid, they would have like two parties for their kids. And it would be like one party will be for the conservative people, the government people, the religious people, and then the other would be like for people that they actually like and vibe with. Like I'm telling you, they live completely double lives. They had separate Facebook pages. Back then, Facebook was like the main social media, and MySpace was dying out. And Instagram and apps and all that stuff was new. So yeah, like people would have separate lives, like different, like completely different. Like people who had money were doing that. And then the people who didn't have money, if they wanted to have anything, they either had to have the thing with their conservative circle or not have it at all if they didn't have money to like do the whole double life thing. I knew someone that eloped because they didn't like the way their conservative family was trying to dictate their wedding. They didn't want to wear a white dress. They didn't want to, have a religious ceremony or anything. So they just eloped, and it caused a huge problem with their family. So yeah, it was very common. I know when I lived in that area at the time, I had green hair, and it was very common for people to look at me like they were so disgusted with me and be like, why is your hair green? Like, why did you do that to yourself? And it would be one thing if that was just like one or two experiences, but that was like a common occurrence on the regular basis. People would just be like, ew, why's your hair green? Why'd you do that to yourself? I don't understand. I don't know. Like, it was just weird. It was common for people to take pictures of me without my consent, even though I was 19 and at the time looked like a literal child, and it was mostly like grown adults doing it. Not to say that that doesn't happen in Chicago, but it's less common, especially in the area that I'm in. Like, I'm on the north side of Chicago where, it's more alternative friendly and there's more people, in the alternative spaces. But yeah, it was very common for people to take pictures of me without my consent. It was a different world back then. Colorful hair is practically normal now. Yeah, it is practically normal now, but I also feel like it depends on the area that you're in. I wonder if people still look at people with private green here in DC now. I would know. I haven't been to that area in over 10 years. Like, I haven't been there since 2012, 2013. But, you know, based on media that I see from like the DC area, it's still very common. It's still very like that. Maybe not to the extreme that it was, back then, but it's still very religious, very conservative, a little religious, a little close minded. So I don't know. But I would never move there. I only moved there because my family moved there, and at the time I was a teenager, and that's, what I was pretty much forced to do. But I would not move there again. I would go there and visit as a tourist. I really like the giant cemetery that was in Virginia, and like the DC airport, like their little mall area. It's not as big as O'Hare, which makes it slightly easier to navigate if you're traveling. But yeah, I like their giant cemetery in Virginia that they had for the veterans. Like, it was just like very nice and peaceful. I went there a few times when I was in the area. But yeah, like, I would only go there as a tourist. I don't think I've ever moved there again of my own free will and volition because of how I was treated years ago. And I just feel like that's just not the vibe for me. Yeah, all the government stuff in DC. I just don't like how a lot of people, I just don't like the whole double life and people pleasing thing. And I'm grateful that I got to move back to Chicago so that I had more representation where I didn't feel like I had to live a double life and I didn't feel like I had to pick a career that I didn't like and be miserable just like everybody else. Because it felt like that was my only option because that's all that I saw. But then I moved back to Chicago and I met all these people and I saw all people of all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds, and all these different career options in all these different places that you can work at that are alternative friendly, all these places you can move to that are more alternative friendly. So I definitely feel like, representation matters, and like it really helps people feel more secure in themselves when they see you being yourself and expressing that self freely, and it normalizes it so that you don't have these weird stares and interactions and people asking you dumb questions. I remember one time I worked for a non for profit, and one of my coworkers found out that I was goth, and he was like, I don't get it. Why do you just want to go to the cemetery and be depressed all the time and plot ways to kill yourself with your friends? Like, why is that a thing that you want to do? And I just looked at him so confused 'cause I was like, what the hell did you just ask me? Where did that even come from? Like, you just made that up and asked me something that completely makes no sense. Yeah, it's changed a lot over the years. In my opinion, the goth scene in Chicago used to be better before Neo closed, but now it's just different as far as, like the club scene and going out goes. Like, there's so many changes over the years. I feel like we had more options like 10 years ago, back when Neo was a thing and all these other places were active. So there was this club called Neo that was around since the 70s, but they sold to this developer, and the real estate developer sold to a preschool like, I don't know, I would say maybe like 8 years ago. Even though that, even though Neo like had good patrons and lots of people would go there, especially when it was like closing down, people like they still sold it and everybody was mad. So Neo was open like 7 days a week, and they had goth nights, but they also had like other like rock nights, disco nights, and such. So if you were just bored on like a random Tuesday and you needed something to do, you can just go hang out at Neo. And I feel like Neo created a space for like different people within the subculture to express themselves, and it was just really fun. I feel like the DJs were really good at reading the room and playing music that really fits the crowd. Like you can go to Neo and dance the night away, stay hydrated, and go home and you feel refreshed. I really like, spaces like that. And then there was this place called Dark Wave, which was like in the suburbs, and people would just like carpool and go out there and dance. Oh, there's a place called Medusa's. That's what the place was called. That would be also like once a month, and they play like electronica, EDM, like goth industrial music. But it was like actually good and like danceable, and they had like professional DJs and such. So like it was just really fun to have that, those different things. But since Neo closed down and Dark Wave stopped playing, I feel like all those people kind of navigated towards Nocturna, and they request a lot of that type of music. And now the vibe is different. It doesn't really play as much goth music as they used to. And Scary Lady Sarah is the one that hosts it, and her personal music collection is good, but a lot of requests are bad. But yeah, I haven't gone out because the music has changed a lot, and then COVID happened, and then I got sick, and now I'm like immunocompromised, and I can't handle like being in an environment like that. But Scary Lady Sarah does stream on Twitch if you want to check her out. Like she does like a virtual Nocturna thing on Twitch. So I do like those. Those are pretty fun. Even if I'm not out clubbing, dancing, I still enjoy the music. Yeah, that's a strange thing for a coworker to say. But that's not even the strangest thing somebody's ever said to me at work or out there, Like people just made all kinds of assumptions. One time somebody asked me, like, why are you evil? Why do you worship the devil? Like, why do you want to be a demon? But yeah, like people ask wild shit out there. It's actually insane. Um, did I get sick during the pandemic? I got diagnosed in 2022, but I found a lump in my chest in 2021, and it took forever just to get me in because everybody was gaslighting me. People, like, I kept calling all these different places that do mammograms, and they kept telling me that they couldn't see me because they only test people who are 40 and up, 35 and up, 50 and up, whatever. And I would explain to them my situation and talk to them about, my family history and everything. They still would not see me. So by the time I was able to actually get somebody to take me seriously, it had been months later and like a whole new year. And then, they kept, I don't know, they kept testing me for a lot of different things, and they kept spreading it out. And I'm like, can we just hurry up and finish all these tests? Can we just stack them all up in one day at least, and stop spreading it out, weeks apart, so that we can start treatment soon? And then, I got diagnosed in May of 2022, but I wasn't allowed to start treatment until August. So this whole time they're doing all these tests and everything. My cancer is accelerating, and they were trying to get me to go to the fertility clinic to preserve my eggs because chemo damages your organs and it has a chance of making you infertile. So even though I was telling these people that I don't want kids, I just want to hurry up and get the treatment, they were trying to force me to go to the fertility, which would delay my cancer treatment even more, which could cause it to accelerate even more. And part of the treatment for preserving your eggs is to inject yourself with hormones. And I tested positive for the BRCA gene, which is a breast cancer gene that basically means that I can't have hormones. So they were willing to risk putting me at risk of making my cancer worse than it already was just to try and force me into preserving my eggs that I didn't want to preserve. And then one of the nurses were like, "Oh, aren't you in a relationship? What about your man? What if you get married? What if he wants kids?" And I'm just like, "He's not the one with the cancer. Don't schedule me for this appointment. I'm not gonna go. And I'm not paying the fee for the no-show." So yeah, like I would say, like, kind of during the pandemic, I feel like the pandemic never really ended. And now we have like a new one with bird flu and norovirus and all this other stuff. So yeah, I would say kind of diagnosed. I don't know when the cancer started though, because I had slacked off on my monthly breast exams, and then something told me that I should catch up on it. And then that's when I found the first lump. But by the time I started treatment, I had a whole new lump form in my armpits. And then when they did body scans of me, they saw that it was also starting to form in my liver. So all this time that they were delaying my treatment and refusing to even test me in the first place for months on end, my cancer was actively getting worse. And then I was lied to about how severe my cancer was. I was initially told that I just had like the beginning stages of cancer. It's not that big of a deal, like with treatment and everything, you should be fine. And I was under the impression for the longest time that I had stage one, stage two. But anytime I would ask, like, hey, how do I know the specific stage I'm in? They kept telling me, oh, you have to go to a stageologist. They're booked solid for months. We don't know what stage you're at. Let's just hurry up and get you into treatment. And it was a fucking lie because it's like, you wouldn't be able to get me into treatment without a treatment plan, and you wouldn't be able to form a treatment plan without knowing what type of cancer I have. I didn't find out what type of cancer I truly had until like a month after I had officially gotten the news that I was cancer free from my oncologies. My oncology plastic surgeon, she did a what do you call it? When they did my mastectomy, she biopsied some of the tissue to see if the cancer was still there, and the cancer wasn't there anymore after they had ran some tests. So like a month after that is when I got some paperwork basically saying like patient has stage 3 triple negative metastatic breast cancer with the BRCA2 gene. And I'm just like, what the heck? I didn't have stage 3. Like, this must be a mistake. But no, it wasn't. They just were not wording any of my paperwork, and they weren't telling me. And when I asked the nurse about it, why was I lied to about, my cancer and how severe it was, and they told me, oh, we didn't want you to panic. And I'm just like, I had cancer. I was already panicked. Like, what do you mean? And she explained to me that they basically have to lie to patients, especially women, especially when you live with a man, because of statistics. So basically, 50% of married women, once they get diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer specifically, they're more likely to get a divorce or an increase in domestic abuse. And even if you have a pretty healthy relationship, domestic abuse can start as a result of your cancer diagnosis. And it helps when people think that it's not that bad. And a lot of times, people who get diagnosed with cancer don't die from the cancer. They die because they decide to give up and control alt delete themselves. Even if the doctor tells them, congratulations, you have stage 0, we just need to do this, this, and this, and then you're cancer free. As soon as people get the diagnosis, they just give up on life. And they didn't want that to happen to me, essentially. So that's why I was lied to, because of statistics and because I live with a man. And even though I don't have an abusive relationship, statistics say that you're more likely to experience domestic abuse if you have breast cancer. So they didn't tell me the truth about my treatment because they didn't want to alarm me or my partner or cause me to harm myself or other people. So, yeah, and like some other statistic stuff. Yeah, they don't listen to people about their health and medical history, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're complaining about, something that specifically affects women, like breast cancer. A lot of people are trying to tell me, oh, you're young, you're probably just on your period, you're probably pregnant, probably PMS. Haha. Sorry I cackled. That's the strangest thing someone has said to me. Wow, why do you want to be a demon? People are so weird. Yeah, people are very weird. And, I grew up in Chicago, a city that's very diverse. I did not grow up, in a super religious family. We went to church sometimes. We would, say grace sometimes. My family would make me go to church on Christmas and Easter, but it wasn't all the time, thing for us. So being immersed in this culture of people that are super conservative, that was very foreign to me. That was very different. That's true. OMG, your liver. I don't understand how they can delay and refuse testing. That's infuriating. It is infuriating. And then they told me that they weren't going to do a biopsy on my liver to test and see to confirm that it's cancer because it was so small that they were hoping that it would just go away with chemo treatment and then they would test me again to see if the spot is still there. And luckily, because they gave me a very high dose of chemo, and I stopped counting my chemo sessions after 20, but I did about 5 months every week and then every other week for the last month or so. So after all the chemo treatment they gave me and how high the dose was, the spot on my liver went away, as well as the actual tumors that I could see and feel before I started treatment. That went away. It's so wonderful that you're cancer free, especially after all the delays and wellness you went through. Yes, I don't take being cancer free for granted because I just came to the realization that me and my sister are the first people in our family to have ever survived breast cancer. Both of our parents actually had cancer. My dad died of not liver, he died of lung cancer because, he was a hardcore smoker. And then my mom, she also had breast cancer. But, back then they didn't have the gene testing. This technology is relatively new. They've only, figured it out within the past 5 years or so. Like they just, got the technology to test a specific gene for breast cancer, cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, and such. So it's still relatively new, but yeah, like it is amazing to be cancer free because me and my sister are the first people to have ever survived this disease thanks to advances in medical technology. So I don't take that for granted. Especially knowing, how severe my cancer really was, and, learning more about the impact of how much chemo I was given and the high doses and the side effects I'm still suffering with today. Today, I'm still dealing with a lot of side effects that come from cancer. But, I'm happy to be alive and I'm happy to survive everything. And I'll make another video talking more about my cancer journey, but I tend not to talk about it a lot on the internet because I didn't want my whole social media to be, woe is me, I had cancer and now my life sucks. Like, I want to get on social media and connect with the like-minded groups of people like you all and just be able to say, hey, look, I'm an artist, I do makeup, you know, like I have a personality, like I'm a whole person. I'm not just this a vessel for cancer and that's it. And I didn't want cancer to just consume my whole life and take away my whole personality and just be about this one thing. And I want to, of course, it's a part of my life and I don't want to ignore it, but also at the same time, I'm just like, well, I'm a whole person. I have all these different talents and skills, and I don't want it to go to waste just because I had this awful disease that tried to kill me. That's so sad that people just give up. I didn't realize that was common, but I can see why it is. Yeah, it's so wonderful that you're cancer free, especially after the delays and the wildness you went through. Yeah, it is amazing that I'm able to be cancer free and that I'm able to be alive and that my body was strong enough to handle all of the treatment and everything. Um, Even though I wasn't quite told the truth about everything at the time, after they explained the statistics and the dangers and things that they see on a regular basis, just to try and protect me and just to make sure that all their efforts aren't in vain. Like, I can completely understand why, but I was still just like, at the same time, just like I could have used that information because I didn't, for the longest time, I didn't understand why things were so hard for me. I was like, I am exhausted. I am tired. It is hard to breathe. It is hard to walk. It is hard to exist. Um, at one point, one of my doctors was saying, like, hey, do you want me to write your prescription for a walker? Like, do you think you need one of those? And I was just so confused because I kept seeing all this I kept seeing all these feel good stories about other cancer patients that would be like single mom of three, is a bodybuilder that works out 4 times a week, runs 5 miles a day, and bikes every day, on top of managing all of her kids and works full time 40 hours a week. And I just be like, how is she able to do all that? And I'm struggling with just, stage one, stage two. And it turned out I had stage three, almost went to stage four. And that's why things were so hard for me. If I would have known how severe things really were, then I wouldn't have felt so bad about, struggling so much. So sorry you lost your parents to cancer. I lost my dad to esophageal cancer last year, so I know how hard it is to lose someone. I can't imagine losing both parents. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for your loss of your dad because, and that was just last year, so that's recent. I know you're still grieving. You're never done grieving, but that's so like fresh. That was like a year ago. And I'm just, I'm sorry for your loss. Losing parents is hard, whether you're an adult, whether you're a child, it doesn't matter if you're 4 or 50, losing parents is hard. So happy is different for you and your sister. Thank you so much. Me too. I'm happy that we both get to be alive. You know, she's a single mom of two kids. You know, I'm glad that my niece and nephew didn't have to go through the generational trauma of losing their mom like we had to lose ours. And then my mom had to lose her mom to the same disease. And we didn't know that it was genetic at the time. But you know, since you do have a parent that has cancer, you know, I will urge you to see if there is some DNA testing available for you. Since you know we've just discovered that cancers are genetic, especially you know some more than others. So you may want to go get tested and see if you test positive for you know some of the same genes that your dad had before he had cancer, just to rule it out and make sure that you're safe, you and your siblings if you have any. Were you a teenager at the time that you lived in Maryland, or like early 20s? I'm so sorry you had a terrible year. I can understand why, you know, losing your father and everything. That's rough. I hope that you're able to, you know, have, you know, a better experience. 23 to 25 when I live in DC. It feels like a different life. It was a different life. Everything is so different now. I really had no idea that my life would end up the way that it has ended, and I could have never imagined that, you know, 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. I just hope that you're able to have a better year and enjoy your time in San Diego because that's rough. It is a different life. Do you feel like because of your age and how conservative the area was at the time that you felt more pressure to be a normie or like kind of be like a closet goth alternative person? Yes, no problem. Wishing the best for everyone this year. Peace, joy, fun. You know, start this year off on good habits, working out, stretching, meditation, listening to sound bowls, just focusing on my mental health and well being. Yeah. Like, do you feel like because of the area that you felt more pressure to try and fit in and conform more? Because I kind of felt that when I lived in that area as well. I felt like, yeah, I had green hair and like I would have my eyeliner and stuff. And I had, you know, whatever alternative fashions that I had access to at the time. But I felt like more out of place in that area than I do in Chicago. Like out there is like I felt like I was more likely to be harassed, to be stared down, to be filmed, to have people take pictures of me, to have full on adults make fun of me. That's what was really odd. Because, like, in Chicago, it's like if people my age, you know, teenagers, young adults make fun of me, then it's just like, yeah, whatever, that's just a kid. But, you know, full on adults were bullying me, like random strangers on the street, you know. I would be walking down the street and somebody in their car would say something to me. I would be in Barnes and Noble and people would take pictures of me and act like they're taking pictures of something else. And I was like a literal teenager. For sure, I moved to DC for a job, a non for profit job in a professional setting, so I did feel pressure. Plus, so many told me goth and metal was white people shit and I'm Mexican. Oh wow, that's crazy. People were telling me the same thing, and I'm black. So yeah, that whole like, oh, this is for white people thing is still really prevalent despite, all of the representation that we see. I actually lived I actually had a non for profit job out there too. It was like a fundraising job that my friend had put me onto. And I was like outside trying to get people to sign up for different charities. I was working with like one that did work with like human trafficking, and like had to try and convince people to sponsor these kids for like $30 a month or whatever. And it was just really scummy sales practices where they were telling us like, oh, if you see someone smoking, then you should tell them that they could give up smoking and then they can give money to these kids instead. Oh, if you see someone drinking Starbucks, and you can tell them like they can give up Starbucks and help these kids instead. Like they encourage us to be like judgmental and like try to bully people into giving to these charities. I also felt shame about being into Gotham Metal since I was doing social justice work. A lot of people doing that work looked at me being weird for being into Gotham Metal. Yeah, same. People were just like, what are you doing out here, trying to get me to give money to these kids looking like that? And, they associated being goth, being alternative, as being dark, as being evil, as being, the exact opposite of someone that wants to try and help people. So there was a lot of confusion, there was a lot of pressure. There were people telling me that I should dress differently, or that I should dye my hair, or that I should wear a wig, just to like make other people feel more comfortable to approach me. No way, that's so funny. We had so many similarities, and probably had crossed paths if we were in the same years. Yeah, probably. Um, I think the golf club I went to out there was called Midnight, and I was more so in like the fashion, like modeling scene. I know there was a place called Graffiti Warehouse out there where they would host like monthly photo shoots, which was alternative friendly. That's where a lot that's where I met a lot of alternative people there. Um, I know that there was this place called Artomatic where every year they would have this giant art festival in like a corporate building and then tear it down. And I ended up working there one year, and it was really fun. I met a lot of interesting people there. I think that was in Virginia, but I took like the DMV train system to get there. No way, that's so funny. We had so much. That's crazy. Also true about shaming people. Yeah, like it was like a sales job, where they encourage you to be judgmental of the people and shame them. But then also in the process, they're kind of shaming you for being different as well, while also advocating to help people and like be a good person. Like it was a very odd paradox. That's something I realize I don't like about the left. I'm mostly still leftist, but I don't like how we think shaming people is an effective tactic for shame, because it's really not usually. I honestly agree, because I'm leftist in a way that is, for human rights and inclusivity, not leftist in a way that is mostly Eurocentric and tries to shame people and has like this whole like Christian religious, undertone to it, like this whole purist mentality. I don't like that. I don't like it in any leftist spaces, whether, it's in the goth space, it's in like the plant based vegan space, it's in religion, spirituality, or anything. I also feel like that comes from anybody being too far into just one thing and not being like a multi-dimensional person, and not really having any connection to like different cultures and such. So that there's that is very odd. It's like I don't like the whole shaming and judging, and like being mean to people, and like essentially trying to harass them into going along with whatever it is that you feel like they should be doing. Like it just seems very manipulative and judgmental, and it's harmful. When people have tried to shame me in the past to try and manipulate me into doing things that I didn't want to do, I actually ended up doing the exact opposite out of spite, you know? Like, the more people tried to bully me out of being alternative, the more I dived into it and leaned into it more. Like, before I was a plant based person, I went to a 7-day Adventist school where where they believe that eating meat is bad and, you know, God doesn't want you doing that. And I would pay teachers to like go get me some food from Burger King. Every time I ordered a pizza, I would get the meat lovers pizza. Every time I ordered from the Chinese place, I would get like the meat lovers fried rice, and I would like fan it in the hallway on my way to the dorm room. And anytime someone would tell me, "Oh, why are you eating meat? God doesn't want you doing that. I'm gonna pray for you," I'd be like, "Cool. I'll think about that the next time I'm eating my meat lovers pizza." And I didn't even eat meat like that, but I just felt like I wanted to do it more just out of spite because people were trying to shame me into it. You know, I wasn't religious. I was never really into, you know, being religious. You know, the more people were trying to come pray together, come say grace, you know, come to church, come join this club. You know, the more people tried to get me into it, the more I was like more becoming atheist, and the more I was like reading about, you know, different religions and cultures and going away from it. So this whole shaming people thing doesn't work for people like me who are spiteful and petty. Yes, mostly Eurocentric, exactly. People don't get that, especially when it's like people being hypercritical instead of taking a look at themselves to see if they can do better. Yeah, I feel like you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. You know, I feel like it's that kind of thing. Like, if you want to convince people to do good things, then you should just be a good person to do that and not be like judgmental and critical, because then people are just going to go the opposite way out of spite, and you're not going to get what you want. That's why I reject the idea of being a good person now, quote unquote, because it's used to manipulate others. Oh, if you were a good person, then you would do this, this, and this. Yeah, I don't like that either. I definitely experienced that. You know, I had a former friendship where, you know, anytime I wouldn't want to go along with the group, anytime I would say no or express being uncomfortable with something, it was always, well, if you were a good friend, then you would just deal with this. Well, if you were a good friend, then you would just deal with being uncomfortable, and you should take this sacrifice to be a good friend. It was never like a, well, we can find something in the middle to compromise that works best for both of us. You know, like I was always expected to go along with the group even against my own interests, and I don't like that. So I don't. So that's why I was like, I don't. That's why I said that's my former friend. I'm not, you know, with that person. I'm not in that person's life anymore. LMO, that's hilarious about going with extra meat. Next time I order, I'll make it meat lovers just for you. That's what I would say to people. Like I went to a 7-day Adventist boarding school. So I actually lived at the school. I couldn't go home. We weren't allowed to go home once a month. And like I lived in Chicago. I lived in the west suburbs of Chicago. And this school was in Wisconsin. So the only food I had access to was whatever the school wanted to provide me with. And I didn't like their fake meats. And I didn't know anything about being a 7-day Adventist. I was sent to this school to try and like, as like a last ditch effort to try and get me to be religious, to try and move me away from being alternative, because the news had these, I don't know, it was kind of like satanic panic on the news. it would be like, it's 9 o'clock. Do you have an emo kid? Do you know where your emo kid is? Well, we need to be careful about these emo kids. They're cutting themselves, they're suicidal. You need to get them some help. You need to take them to church. You need to give them some good influences before they turn into delinquent adults. Like, there were all these PSAs on TV about emo kids and, going down a dark path or whatever, and my family was concerned, so they sent me to the Seventh Day Adventist school as like a last ditch effort to try and hurry up and indoctrinate me into Christianity before I turned into an adult. And it didn't work. It turned me away from it even more. So as I'm saying, like, the more you try and push something onto somebody, the more you're just gonna go the opposite way. But yeah, I did. Oof, no, not that if you were a good friend, huge red flag. It's never a two-way street. Yeah, like, anytime I needed something, those people were never there for me. Anytime I wanted to hang out, nobody would ever answer my calls, nobody would ever answer my texts. But anytime they wanted to do something, it was, oh my gosh, we need to hang out. Like, what are you doing right now? Like, come hang out with us. There were so many times where they would already be in the restaurant and already ordered their food and already started eating halfway across town and be like, hey, want to come hang out with us? Like, we're at this restaurant. Want to come eat? And I just be like, no, I'm at work. Like, oh, work isn't that important. You should just come with us instead. Just call off sick. And I just be like, no, I can't because I worked at Instacart at the time, which is an app, not a real person. And, once you select shifts, you can't just leave. And, like, I needed the money to go to school for dental assisting, and they knew that. And I don't know. And it made it seem like I was such a bad friend for not wanting to go stop what I'm doing in the middle of work to go hang out with them after they had already made plans and started in the middle of it. Like, bye. We need to be careful about these emo kids. That's wild that they send you away just for being alternative. Yeah, I felt like they thought that me being surrounded, by these people, especially in a boarding school, that, you know, it would make me more Christian and it would somehow change the things I'm interested in. And it didn't. It made me turn away from religion even more because of how overt it was. I never got a break. If you go to church on Sunday, you go home, it's like, okay, church is over. But if you go to a religious school and it's a boarding school, it's like it's embedded into everything. It was the school, it was the work, it was, after school, it was lunch, it was the weekends. Like, I never got a break from it, and I was just so sick of it. And anytime I had any questions, I was always dismissed or seen as disrespectful. And like, the more I told people that I'm not religious, the more people would be like, yeah, I know you're not religious, but then they try and indoctrinate me into religion. And like, it was crazy. One time they told this story. You know how preachers tell stories that are, low key directed towards specific people that they don't, call out? I think that the story was directed towards me because I told so many people that I'm not religious. And they told like this story in church about how there was this one kid that wasn't religious, that was, into heavy metal and dyeing his hair crazy colors and getting piercings and tattoos and all that stuff. But then they took him away to this camp, locked him in the room, prayed over him heavily, and told him that he couldn't leave until he turned his life over to Jesus Christ. And kept him there for like 3 days with little to no food or water until he finally agreed to go with their plans. And now he's a camp counselor at this religious camp and a youth pastor. So if you have kids in your life that are not religious and are going down a dark path, then you just need to love on them more in a good Christian way, which, is code for like, we need to torture these kids if they're not going to do what we want. So I took that as a threat and was disgusted by it. Yeah. Just call off sick. It's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. They were very privileged. They worked in a field that I no longer worked in, where they could just call off work whenever they wanted to, and they had more money, and they can, spend their money in all kind of crazy ways, and they lived a different lifestyle essentially. They didn't really understand that I was poor and struggling and needed all the money that I could get and work all the jobs I can get to help get out of my situation. Like, it was pretty careless. Like, anytime they wanted to hang out, I'd be like, okay, cool. But anytime I would text or call, nothing. And then I would meet up with them next time, they'd be like, oh, sorry, I'm bad at texting. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm bad at answering the phone. And it's just, so yeah, I'm not friends with those people anymore because it was very one sided and manipulative and very, like, tone deaf. But yeah, just call off sick. It's crazy. It is crazy. I would never call anybody in the middle of a work day and tell them to come hang out with me after I've already made plans and I'm sitting in a restaurant eating and tell them to just call off sick. It's not a good friend to ask you to harm your own well being and stability. Yeah, exactly. Like, to them, they were just like, oh, well, where were your friends if you were a good friend and you would just spend time with us because, jobs or whatever. Jobs don't really matter, you know. For them, it's like, yeah, money's always coming. We don't care. But it's like the reason why money was always coming for them is because they're more financially privileged. And they come from good families and they come from good homes that, gave them a good start in life. One of my friends, her parents were paying her rent while she was in college. And, the other friend, she did a variety of different jobs that were more high paying that I couldn't get into. So it was just very tone deaf and very, like, not inclusive. Yeah, I guess it's something, if we're lucky, we learn to discern with time. Yeah, I definitely learned a lot about discernment from a lot of these friendships that I've been in over the years. It's made me a little nervous to make new friends because I'm like, dang, what if, this turns into another situation? But I feel like I'm better at discernment and everything because it is crazy. It is actually an insane thing to go through. It is actually, I don't know, it's actually wild. But yeah, very, very tone deaf. I don't recommend that. That's why I don't buy into the quote unquote being a good person or being a good anything because oftentimes it's just like, if you were a good such and such, then you would do this, this, and this, and don't let me manipulate you. So I get that if someone is being too one sided or take, I pull away before we get too close. Yeah, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like, yeah, I just feel like that's a very weird behavior, and I don't even know what to do with that. But my phone is low battery, so I'm gonna have to catch you guys in another live. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks for chatting with me, and I will see you later. But I gotta turn it off before my phone shuts down. Bye. Glad you had fun. Bye. No problem. How do I get out of here? Okay. I figured out how to close out.